Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to my backyard. We're going to talk a bit today about dealing with insect pests in the garden. Now, all that hard-earned work and money that you put into your garden, you want to make sure that you get a crop out of it. And if you're going to go spraying chemicals on it, well, you may as well buy it from the supermarket anyway. So let's talk about a few of the common ones. Probably the first one up would be aphids. Now, if they're in small numbers, then just squish them with your thumb. Just run your finger across the leaf. I have some roses growing over there. The only reason I have them is because on their new growth, the aphids will attack that first, and then I know I've got aphids in the garden. And I can just quickly go and squish, 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 and I've cut it by 80%. They won't, not enough there to do any damage, and the predators will soon come along and finish them off. If I spray them, all I'm doing is giving the nothing to attract the predators. I'll have nothing left to attract predators, so they'll never arrive, and I've just given a clear space for more aphids to come along. Okay, you can see on this broccoli here the leaf is curled up. You'll see inside we've got a big mass of aphids. Now we can just go and squish them, but what we can see is the grey ones, they're the living aphids. Squish, done. But these larger ones here, they're actually being parasitised by little wasps. So those big swollen up ones there, they're already essentially dead. They're actually zombies with baby wasps growing inside. So I always leave them, and it doesn't matter if you miss a few of the aphids. If you've got a major problem with them, you can hit them up with the old soapy water trick, but just doing the quick squish on a few spots, that'll get the job done really quite well. And keep these little ones here so the wasp hatch out and keep doing the job for you. Probably one of the, if you've got a serious infestation, probably one of the easiest ways is to make up a white oil. It's just vegetable oil, water, and a little bit of soap or detergent. And just give that a shake and give them a spray, and they suffocate. Another related insect is scale. Now you'll see on these on the branches and stems of things like trees like citrus and so on. And they look like a little brown dot or a little brown cover. If you scrape them off with your fingernail, underneath you'll find that there's an aphid looking creature underneath sucking sap out of your plants and reducing the quality of your fruit. Again, the white oil will do nicely on them, but particularly if serious infestation, get in there with a white oil and a toothbrush and just get in there and just scrub them off. If there's only small numbers, flick them off with your fingernail, spray a bit of soap, they'll be fine, just keep an eye on them. The main thing is if you have a lot of wild areas in your garden and you encourage a lot of predators and establish a bit of an environment where birds and insects and frogs and snails and lizards and things, where they're all welcome, you'll find that eventually you won't have any particularly major problems from any insects at all. A common one that we're getting lately, people talk about, is earwigs. Now, the easiest way to deal with them, and look, they're not a big problem, it's mostly when you put new seedlings in. Easiest way to deal with them, put a stick in the ground that a pot will sit on. In that pot, we screw up a bit of newspaper or other paper, we're in about that deep, and then in the mornings, when the sun comes up, we come out and grab the bit of paper and we shake it into a bucket with a bit of soapy water in it. The reason we use soapy water is because we want them to sink through to the bottom. Without the soap, they'll just float on the surface tension on top. So we just shake out the night's catch that have hidden in there, pop that back in, and there we go. You can do the same sort of thing with half an orange. You know, if you scoop out an orange and just use the peel, put that in, they'll hide in that as well. Works quite well for things like slaters as well. One of the more common problems that people have is snails and slugs, which are basically homeless snails. Best way to deal with them is if you go out on a wet night and brave the rain for a little while with a torch and a bucket, you can just walk around and pick them up and greatly reduce the numbers by doing that. Don't use any of the snail pellets that are blue or green in colour, because they'll be toxic to other things. If you really must use snail pellets, for example, if you just put in a whole row of cabbages and broccoli and so on, then the brown coloured ones will break down to a simple fertiliser, so they're okay-ish to use. But if you really want to build that sustainable environment in your garden, avoid them altogether. I've got frogs and lizards in the garden. They take care of most of the slugs and snails. But another thing you do is get a container like this or a yogurt pot, bury it up to soil level and half fill it with beer. So the old beer trap method, the slugs and snails, they crawl it in, they die. And not only that, they die happy. Another way of using the beer method is get rid of the container and just drink the beer until you don't care about the slugs and snails. All right, another common one across the west that people have been having trouble with over the last few years is Harlequin beetles. They're little sap-sucking beetles. You often don't realise how much damage they're doing until you get rid of them. The best way to deal with them is to squash them. Now, if you do that in spring, you can squash them 2 at a time and really ruin their love life. But if you get them in winter, when they're semi-dormant, you'll find that they gather in places like behind fence palings and downpipes, under a stack of bricks. Last year I shifted some roof tiles, spare roof tiles, and every second roof tile there was a huge handful of them that I could just grab and throw straight into a bucket of soapy water for them to drown. Now, if we have a look behind us here, we'll see some that in my little wood pile here for my oven, we'll see some Harlequin beetles that are overwintering. And they've been overwintering there. They've been there for a few weeks now, and they'll be rushing out ready to breed if I don't get them. I've just been keeping them for you, just for this video. The only other thing that leaves us to deal with that's of any real consequence is the caterpillars on your cabbage and your broccoli. Now, a lot of people call them cabbage moths. They're really a butterfly, but like, who cares? But those white butterflies you see flitting around, they're the ones that parent and lay eggs under the leaf of your new cabbage and broccoli and so on. What you need to do is just search for them by hand. If you get them when the plant's young, once the plant's well established, they'll only eat leaves out on the outer edge, and you don't have to worry about them so much. It's mostly important to deal with those little caterpillars or the eggs when it's in the early stages, when you've just planted the seedlings, and any damage to them is going to make them very vulnerable to loss. It seems that both slugs, snails, caterpillars, earwigs, they go for damaged plants, which is in a normal environment, that's something, you know, that's their job to do. But in the garden, that when you put in a new seedling, they identify that as a damaged plant. So once you get it established and growing, it's going to be far less susceptible to damage. So check them out, pick them off. If you've got chickens, save the caterpillars for the chickens. But just by going through and checking them for the first month or so, every couple of days, even just once a week will be enough, you'll deal with the problem without there being much issue. You can use other things. You can use, there's a product called Dipel, which is, or Dipel, however you like to pronounce it. It's a liquid you can spray on that it contains a virus that destroys the stomach of whatever eats your cabbages. Now, it's non-selective, so it'll kill any other caterpillars around from other butterflies. But if you're only spraying it on your cabbages and things like that, if you have a major problem, if you're only spraying it on them, then it's only going to kill the cabbage moths. For more hints and tips and great videos like this, check out the My Smart Garden website.